So anyway, so now I think we are live, actually live on, and we'll have to see as people start to come in. It tends to bring them in a little slowly, but we're not going to wait for that.
Yeah.
We're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everybody. This is Steve Miller, better known as Kelly's dad and marketing gunslinger. If you don't know who I am, well, where have you been the last 25 years, with IMTS? Because I have been consulting and speaking for IMTS for over 25 years. Yes, I am old. So, but I love I'm going to tell you right now how excited I am about my interview today. Thanks for coming on to IMTS Spark. I appreciate you joining us and watching this, because this is obviously an important conversation. This conversation affects everybody because we're talking about stress. And first of all, I want to welcome Eliz Greene, who and I think I pronounced your name right?
You did.
Right? Eliz?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, that's awesome. And Eliz and I, this is the first time we've ever met. However, we do have a very strong connection because we both have the same publisher. So that's a very cool thing. And today, the day we are doing this, which is January 28th of 2021. Now, when you say 2021, you're not saying that 2020 WON. It did not win. Okay. So anyway, but we are literally, let's see, there's 31 days in January, and then there's not very many in February, but we are literally 5 days away from the launch, from the official release of Eliz's book, Stress Proof Your Life. And this is the basis of what we're going to be talking about today, is Stress Proof Your Life. I mean, because we know that, as of right now, this is a real book. See that? Look how this is not like some people put out books that look like this, but not Eliz. That's a real book. And I want to talk about the way she wrote this book too, as well. But I want to start out by introducing Eliz. And then, obviously I'm going to have some questions for her. For those of you that are on, feel free to come in. You can comment in the chat. You can join us on the Q&A. You can ask questions. If you don't know me, this is very casual. I will be, if you see me looking like this, or, looking down or something like that. Well, first of all, looking down because, I have my notes down here, right? Secondly, if I'm looking over to the side, it's because I'm paying attention to you guys. And if you have something to say, a comment or a question, pop it in there, and we will make sure that we take care of you while we're doing there. But I want to introduce Eliz. I don't want her to be hanging too long. We're recording this. You can watch this later. Now, I have her introduction here, which now this is for speaking, when she's in front of a live audience, right? And it's like, do you worry about the toll your stress is taking on your health, quality of life, and maybe even your sanity? I can tell you what my wife would say about that. And Eliz Greene has a thing or two to say about stress. And now this is where I'm going to skip the rest of that, because now I'm going to reach into a different part about her, because and I guess I should put my glasses on if I'm going to read this. All right. Okay. Surviving a heart attack at the age of 35 while 7 months pregnant with twins propelled Eliz Greene on a mission to share her story to inspire other busy people to pay attention to their health. Now, really the only credibility you need to know are two things. One, she had a heart attack and in one day, tell me what were the three things that happened to you in one day?
I became a parent.
That's right. You had twins.
I did. They were delivered by C-section. I had a massive heart attack, and I had open heart surgery.
And then open heart surgery all in the same day. Okay. Yep. Now, the rest of us that think we fill our days, I'm sorry. Really, that's a full day. And she, so she's got that. She's got that going for her, you know. And now she, and this is not her first book, but this book is great.
Thank you.
And I'm going to tell you why I'm going to say it. But I mean, she's been on TV, she's done all that stuff, all the stuff that we speakers say that we do, and talk to people, thousands of people and stuff like. She's done all that stuff. Okay, so take my word for it. She should be here. Now, let's talk about stress.
All right.
But before we talk. I have one question before we talk about stress, and that is, what did you do before your heart attack?
I was a dance teacher and a choreographer.
Dance teacher and a choreographer.
Yeah. So I owned my own business.
Mm-hmm.
I taught kids and adults and children and adults with disabilities as well. I'm an adaptive movement specialist.
Mm-hmm.
I also would go out, sort of hire out to work with community theater, high school theater, that sort of thing, choreographing their shows.
Mm-hmm.
I loved that work. I was very passionate about that work. And it's probably one of the reasons that I recovered well from my heart attack and all the surgery is that I was in pretty darn good shape to start with. Because being active was just part of my day.
It had to be a factor that helped.
It did indeed.
A very big factor. But clearly, as our really good friend, Sam Silverstein, would say, and he has also been a guest on here too, as well. As he would say, you pivoted.
Yes.
Right?
Yes, absolutely I did.
That was a big pivot.
I pivoted, honestly, and I know this is going to sound weird. I pivoted in the ICU probably about 12 hours after I got out of surgery because I had a very clear vision of standing in front of people and sharing the story, the wacky story about what happened to me to make a difference in. My girls are 20 now. So
it was 20
decades.
years ago. I know it was 20 years ago because you said you made the mistake of saying that your twins are 20.
Right.
And you also said that
you can do the math, right?
35. So I know how old you are. All right.
Yes.
So go ahead.
And each of those 20 years were 20 years I almost didn't have. So I'm not sad about being 55. I'll be 56 in May. I'm delighted. That is fantastic. But so I had that vision of being given this weird story for a reason. And I've spent those 2 decades trying to fulfill that calling, if you will.
That calling, yeah. But I find it interesting that it happened to you that fast. And those of you that don't know professional speakers, like we are, there's a joke in the National Speakers Association about that. If something really bad happens to you, that's good.
It's like that is going on.
Because now you've got something to build a speaking career on. Is that you get to go out there and do all that stuff. And
that's absolutely true.
Yeah, and certainly stress. Is on everybody's. If it's not on your mind right now, well, it's in the back of your mind because we're all suffering from stress. Now, one thing, why does stress exist? Have you given much thought to that?
I have actually. I'm absolutely fascinated by stress and by the chemical reaction that happens in our bodies when we perceive stress in our environment. So let's imagine we're driving down the highway and somebody comes on that on-ramp and they cut you off. They're not going to give you enough room because you're in the right lane, doing your thing. And here comes somebody, they're not paying attention. They're going to cut you off.
Mm-hmm.
Your body experiences a stress reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Cortisol, the stress hormone, floods your system and it does some interesting things. It makes your heart beat faster. It increases your blood pressure. It even makes your blood stickier. So that if you are in a car accident, maybe you won't bleed to death.
Mm-hmm.
All of those are good reactions. We can think a little faster. We can react a little faster. That's all good. Now, when you get over to the left lane and you avoid the car and you go on your way and you sort of do that like, whew, wow. And you have that sort of like bubbly feeling that releases. that's that cortisol coming down out of your body as it's supposed to.
Mm-hmm.
It's supposed to
Right.
go up when you need it and go back down when you don't.
Mm-hmm.
I find several things interesting about that. First, it is hardwired. It just happens. It doesn't ask our permission.
Right.
Second, your body doesn't know the difference between that car cutting you out and a surprise birthday party. Same reaction.
Right. Right. And
everything goes up, and then when it's all done, it comes back down.
So like you just used the birthday birthday as a comparison to a car cutting you off, which are illustrations of good stress and bad stress.
Well, I don't think stress is good or bad. It just is.
It is. It just is.
It's just a reaction that happens in your body.
Mm-hmm.
The problem is when that cortisol level stays up and doesn't get the chance to come back down, that high cortisol level is what causes us trouble. It's not the stress itself. It's the inability to get it back down to normal. And when we live our life at sort of that high alert all of the time, that's when it starts to be a problem. And that's why I started getting interested in stress, because early in my career, I was talking about heart health. And stress is a major risk factor for heart disease.
Mm-hmm.
It's also the one that is the least likely to be treated, because you can't take a pill for stress. There's no, you can't squeeze something on your arm and say, oh, well, you're 90% stressed. There's nothing like that.
Well, doesn't like blood pressure and something like that tell, or does that have, is that like an after effect of something that's happened to you a lot? I don't know.
So one of the things that happens in your body when you're stressed is your blood pressure goes up. That's why they're interacting. Mm-hmm. So it's very hard to get your blood pressure to come back down when your cortisol level is high.
Right.
So if you're worried about your blood pressure, you have to actively make that cortisol level come down, and your body's naturally designed to let it go. That's what it's supposed to do. You just have to help it.
And of course with COVID, and now we are coming on. We're pretty soon. We're going to be about a year since this whole thing started. I have to believe that for most of us, this has been a year of high cortisol.
Yes, for any number of reasons. Prior to COVID, I did a job stress study. And really what I was looking for is to try to quantify what work-life balance looked like so I could solve that problem. Mm-hmm. What I ended up finding was work-life balance isn't the problem. Overwhelm and uncertainty are the problem. That's what people...
Yeah, yes. And in fact, in your book, this book right here, everybody.
I like that yours is tabbed. Mine is tabbed too, because I need to look it up.
Well, okay, see, here are the tabs, from my notes, right, that I was taking and highlighting and stuff like that. These are the tabs for today, because I'm going to be referencing some of the parts inside this book. Now, and one thing I want to say about this book, the fascinating thing about this book is that this book is not a book, and I say this with the greatest respect. This is a workshop.
Oh.
This book is a personal workshop, because she forces you to fill in the blanks, to take assessments, to take quizzes, and the other interesting thing about it is that she also she gives you permission to not read this page one page to the last page.
Right.
Right. Throughout the book, she's constantly saying, okay, now if this is something you want more information about, go to page 260, right? Mm-hmm. Or even in the very beginning, she says, if this is too long, don't read, right? TLDR, and because look at the size of that thing, right?
Yeah.
She has an executive summary in the back of the book. And then she says in the executive summary, okay, if you want to, if there's anything in here that you want to learn more about, now you go back to the place in the book. So the way you formatted the book and the way you are delivering this information, you are engaging the reader to participate with you on this journey through learning about how to stress-proof your life. So I'm
so glad that is your interpretation of it, because it really, one of the reasons it took me so long to write is
this took you a long time.
5 years. 5 years.
Yeah.
Because I'm taking what I normally do in a room
3
with
days.
people.
It took me 3 days to write this book. Okay. So just telling you, she really worked hard on this, and
I did.
and I want to go, and then I want to go back, because in the book, one of the things that you really talk a lot about is uncertainty.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yes.
And why is uncertainty such a huge stressor to us?
It's different than other types of stressors. So unlike the car that's pulling out in front of you, when that's over, you can recover from that stress. Uncertainty never really goes away. We're not getting a break from all of the uncertainty caused by COVID. It's not like, oh, yeah, that was yesterday's problem or 4 o'clock's problem. It's here all of the time, and we can maybe disengage from it, but it never goes away.
And it keeps morphing.
Yeah. And in order, you have to actively disconnect from uncertainty in order to allow that cortisol to come back down. That's true for a lot of us, that we need to disconnect from the source of our stress before we can recover from it.
Would you say that and I think this is fairly obvious when we think about it, is that the purpose of cortisol came back from the old fight or flight reactions, from, I don't know, the Neanderthals or something like that. Because like I say, when cortisol hits you, your senses are heightened.
Mm-hmm.
You see more clearly. Your heart is beating a little bit faster. Like you say, your body is adjusting itself. If you need to run, you need to run. Okay. and it's going to give you that burst to go do that. But nowadays, we don't live in the, where we're hunting for our food, or our food could eat us.
Our food rarely eats us these days.
Yeah. You don't see that very often now. But we still have that. Our body is still wired for that.
Right. But it's not just for that fight or flight situation.
Mm-hmm.
That stress reaction is actually what makes life fun. Like, we have all had that sort of zing when something is happening, even if it's a good thing that's happening, and you're just just jazzed up about it. That's a stress reaction.
Sure.
Some of us need the pressure of a deadline to get things done.
Sure.
Sometimes I need that cortisol reaction that it is 3 o'clock and I need to hit a 5 o'clock deadline. I need that cortisol to get me going.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the problem is when it's all the way up here all of the time, your brain can't function in the same way as when it's ebbing and flowing. So if it's up here all the time, you're going to end up really diminishing your ability to think critically and creatively. So if you have had over the last almost 12 months the experience of staring into the computer screen, trying to solve a problem, or wondering if you're ever going to string together 4 words again, that maybe has something to do with the level of stress that you're under.
And it is, we're suffering a perfect storm.
Yeah.
It's a perfect storm. We've got COVID. We've got the political situation. We have a racial situation. We have the economy. So the idea of uncertainty is just is like this massive black cloud hanging over all of us.
And it's unrelenting.
And it has been unrelenting. And I can't imagine what it must be like, for people who are trying to figure out how they're going to pay for their rent or something like that.
Right. Or worrying about, is their business going to survive, or now are trying to do their job and teach kindergarten and third grade at the same time. There's a
yeah,
lot.
exactly. Yeah.
There's a lot. That overwhelm and uncertainty sandwich is not great.
Yeah, it's you know, it used to be that we could kind of separate our personal life with our professional life. You know, we would
sometimes
we would be at home. Well, we would be for the most part. You know, it was sort of like we would be at home and we would wear our home hat, our personal hat, and we have that, and then we go to work. Well, then we take off our home hat, we put our work hat on, and we go to work, and it was somewhat separate, right? But nowadays with all of this, and like you say, you might be working from home, and then you also have homeschooling. And there's just so much, everything is now overlapping.
It is. And the truth is, it always has been. Our brains don't ask our permission to worry and think about things. So you may be at work and thinking about the fact that your roof is leaking.
Yeah.
You may be at home thinking about whether or not that project is ever going to get completed. Your brain doesn't ask permission. It just does that.
Right.
So it's really about recognizing where you are at in your stress level and taking active steps to decrease that cortisol level, get it back down to normal so that you can recover from the stress you can't avoid. I really think that stress management is a hard skill. I know a lot of times we talk about it as a soft skill. It is a hard skill. There are things that you can actively do to make this situation better.
And we're going to definitely talk about some of those things, but before we get into the how to fix it, I want to kind of like define some stuff. Like you talk about the vitality quotient.
Okay.
Tell me about that.
So that is part of a process I use to help people overcome overwhelm. When there are so many things we all exist in an environment of stress. We are sitting in a stew of all of the things that call for our time, energy, and attention. And there are a lot of people who will talk about, sort of prioritizing and things like that. I have a process to really identify what's in your stress environment and then actively reorder it so that it is supporting what is truly important in looking at these things. The vitality quotient is really a measurement of, let's say it is, let's say the thing that people will say, well, my job is my top stressor. Okay, sure, that makes sense. And you might look at that and I'll ask, is that supporting what's most important to you? And I talk about that as a bubble. Who's in your bubble? Is it you and your spouse? Is it you and your spouse and your children? Maybe it's only you. That's okay. What is your job supporting that? Well, yes, in some ways it does, because you're getting a paycheck, hopefully. You're getting a paycheck. But what we oftentimes lose track of, so you might have given that job a vitality quotient that's very low, like it's not really supporting my bubble. But when we look at the intangible and ancillary benefits of that job, maybe you actually like the people you work with. That's something that enhances your life. Maybe you really value the things that job pays for, and things that it's looking about the benefit of that job more than just the numbers on a paycheck or the things that show up at the end of the year on your tax statement. It's all of the other things. Maybe you find real value in doing a good job. Maybe your boss is great and actually recognizes when you do a good job. All of those things increase the quotient, the vitality quotient of that job. And we go through in this process actually reordering things in terms of how they rate on a vitality quotient, and then actively, it's a very active thing. You're taking Post-it notes from one place and putting it over here and then putting them back, and it's making choices and really examining the things that are in your stress environment, sometimes to feel better about things that are causing you stress, Sometimes it's getting rid of things that aren't supporting the things that are most important and you can let go of, and giving yourself permission. And most importantly, figuring out what are the things that are in your stress environment that you have no control over and you can't avoid. Those are the ones that we need to create a little barrier and keep them from causing us to have that high cortisol level all of the time.
So are you saying then that and I understand this. I mean, I'm probably as guilty as anybody that I tend, when you tend to have stress,
we all do it.
It's sort of like this, just, overwhelming feeling. But so you say, oh man, my job is so stressful, or something like that. Are you saying to compartmentalize? So in other words, you're kind of breaking out, like you say, some of those things that the parts of, like, if you like the people, that you deal with. Okay, so you're pulling that out and you're saying, yeah, this part, I like this. Okay, so that's a good thing. All right, for what my job is doing for me. Okay, and you compartmentalize stuff so that you're separating what the stuff you don't like about it. Like if you have a bad boss, for example,
right.
I'm like that, or boss, like me, I'm a bad boss.
I can't believe that's true.
Ask Phil Van Hooser, he'll tell you.
Okay.
Who we just finished interviewing a couple days yesterday, I think. But I think that's interesting to say that. But I think for me, I also think that might be easier said than done. I mean, is that where, like, manufacturing security, which I love the term, of course, since we're talking to manufacturers, right?
Right. So yes, that's most of the time, the things that I'm saying that you push to the outside, the things that you can't control, are often things related to uncertainty, economy, changes in government regulation, all kinds of different things that you have no personal control over, but may really impact you.
Sure.
There are all kinds of things that cause uncertainty in our lives. And honestly, this whole section is influenced by the fact that my family and I are sailors. We have a sailboat on Lake Michigan. That is our summer activity, our full-time vocation. I have spent a lot of time during COVID in the dark times, as we call it, the off season of sailing, learning more and more about the rules of racing, because I really love it. But we take our 40-foot sailboat, which sounds like a big sailboat until you take it across an open body of water, Lake Michigan, which, depending on when we cross,
it's huge.
It can be 75 or 100 miles of water. It is an inland sea. That is indeed what it's called. And it's cold. It very rarely gets above 65 degrees in the water. Maybe the top layer will get a little warmer in the middle of the summer, but it's cold. So as we do that, people will ask us if it's dangerous. And the answer is yes. There is risk. There's risk to lots of things, but it is a risk that we know. And what we perceive as risk is really just, it's unpredictable. We don't know what will happen. We don't know what the weather will be. We don't know what the wave state will be. It's unpredictable. We can take steps to make what is unpredictable more predictable.
More predictable, right?
Because I can think about what are all the things that I would have to be put in place to make the situation. Our worst case scenario is somebody falls off our boat,
right,
out in the middle of the lake, where we're not going to get help. We can put things in place, and I bet the people listening have done. If you're manufacturing, you have gone through this scenario.
Sure. For
your facility. What's the worst case scenario? How do we limit the poor outcome? I mean, that's what OSHA's all about, right?
Yep.
How do we limit the poor outcome? So for us, it's really identifying what are the things that could happen what would I need to know, have, and practice in order to make that outcome not be tragic? So,
right. You want to mitigate the risk.
right.
And just even the knowledge of the potential risk, is can create a huge stress. I mean, I mentioned in one of my emails to that we used to sail a lot, so we we would take off and be gone for a few days. I mean, I live in Seattle, and we sail up into the San Juan Islands and go over there. I'm really close to doing a Seattle to Hawaii thing, and wasn't able to make it happen. So when I read that you guys every year go across Lake Michigan, I thought that's quite a trek.
It can be, yes.
That's quite a trek, and in order to do something like that, and then of course when you're learning how to sail, it's all about safety.
Right.
Which, and again, the idea of mitigating the risk and mitigating the stress behind that risk. So like your term is manufacturing security.
Right.
That you have a chapter in there about what is manufacturing security, and that's exactly what you're just describing right now.
Right. It's really a process to make something that's unpredictable feel more predictable.
And when you can make it more predictable, that brings down
it absolutely does.
Sure.
One of the studies that I talk about in the book, it's just a fascinating study to me, I'm always interested in why people sign up for these kinds of studies. I think they're college students with not a lot of money. So you would go into this study.
That was me.
Wired up to get an electrical shock.
That's the Stanley Milgram study. Yeah, that's the Stanley Milgram study, which is totally fascinating.
Yeah.
And by the way, if you want to know more about that particular study, there's actually a really great episode on Hidden Brain, the Hidden Brain podcast about that study, and it's worth listening to.
It is, and what it showed was, so you're going to pick up a rock. Either there was a fake snake under the rock, or there wasn't. If there was a fake snake, you got a shock. What they found was, if the outcome of that picking up of the rock was predictable, people were less stressed than if that outcome was unpredictable. So even if you 100% knew that you were going to get a shock that was less stressful than not knowing.
Than not knowing you were going to get a shock. So let's talk a little bit about practicing manufactured security. You have several strategies. How many strategies do you have? 5, I think, or is it more than that? I think it's 5 strategies. You have 5 strategies, and a couple of them really jumped out at me. I'll list the strategies, but I'll tell you which ones I want to talk about. Okay.
All
right. So, and the idea that when you want to manufacture your own security, is to is number one is to look for information, right? Because if the more information you can gather, information alone can reduce stress. Okay. And strategy number 1 that you recommend is to notice and accept the natural reaction to uncertainty. So that's just accepting or just going, okay, yeah, here's stress. And I get it. We're going to get stress. All right. Number 2, this one. I want to talk about this one. Create a security talisman. Talk about that. Why would you're talking about create like a, I don't know.
It's a little thing that you have. A talisman is something that you would have. It's a lucky charm, for example.
Sure.
But the way I use it, it's usually a phrase.
A phrase.
Okay. So on our boat, my phrase for when the storm gets a little rocky or whatever is, we are prepared. We are prepared.
Right.
We've practiced for this. We have all the equipment we could possibly need. We are prepared. And that is what keeps my stress in check, because we have done the work.
Mm-hmm.
We have made the unpredictable more predictable.
Mm-hmm. So, and you know, the idea of carrying, and it might be, like you say, not just necessarily a phrase, but it might be just something, an object that, you know, you carry around and it reminds you.
Right. Well, it could be just having that piece of equipment that makes it possible. So having like actually wearing our life jackets that have, if I were to fall in, it's an inflatable professional flotation device.
Mm-hmm.
It has a light that springs up. It has it's bright, so you could see me, and it has a little sensor that sends out a signal that goes back to our boat.
Yeah, GPS.
That tells people where I am.
Right. So that's mitigating it. And then also, like you mentioned, like when your twins were young, they would have a lanyard to keep them. You always wear your life jackets when you're on deck.
Yes.
And that they would be clipped on.
They were tethered. Yep.
Yeah. They would be tethered to the lines, or not the lines, but to the boat. To the boat, and and all of those things are things that you think of, to mitigate, the issue, right? Okay. And then the third one you say is to disconnect from the source of uncertainty.
That is my favorite.
That's your favorite. Okay. Well, then why is that? And what does it mean?
So that goes actually hand in hand with another section in the book, which is about recovering from stress.
Mm-hmm. We're not going to be able to get through all of it.
I know,
all
but
right.
I'm
telling those other people, So.
I can combine them into one answer. How about that?
Sure.
This uncertainty is one of those things, as I mentioned, that never goes away. It's sort of always there.
Mm-hmm.
If we can disconnect from that source, it allows us to recover. So you mentioned the, quadruple, quintuple pandemic that we're dealing with right now.
Right.
The source of some of our stress of uncertainty is the constant barrage of messaging we get about that.
Mm-hmm.
Finding ways to disconnect from that messaging. I'm a big proponent of being informed, but we don't need to be informed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Also, when we're consuming media in a video form, our brains automatically want to jump into the story. So we want to become part of the story. So all of those images that we're taking in, our brain jumps into it, which can be triggering that stress reaction. Mm-hmm. When we read the news, while I might disagree with it, and I might go right to my congressperson, I'm not trying to jump into the story. Mm-hmm. So consuming media in a written form may be, for me it is.
That's interesting.
A better way to consume it than this constant barrage of video. And that's Facebook and, video news and YouTube and all of it. And all of that is really designed to keep you watching.
Yep.
There are advertisers that would like you to stay there. So the language that's used, the video, the images that are used, and even the music and the sound effects are all like pulling you in to keep you engaged. If you can disengage from that, it's a lot easier to get that cortisol level.
Yeah, I'll tell you what Kay and I did. My smoking hot wife, Kay, and I, we realized that we were, many months ago, we realized, because what we would do is we would watch CNN for a while, and then we would watch Fox for a while. And we go back and forth because, we are neither side. All right. I just want to say that to everybody up front. And I'm not interested in getting into any kind of arguments about this. All right.
Not a political statement.
I am completely uninterested. But we would do that so that we could hear what does the left think? What does the right think? because we want to get both sides. All right.
Mhm.
But what we found was that they were so hyper that they were, hyper left, hyper right. And and of course the cancel culture of like, well, and if they if those guys don't agree with us, well then they're evil, right? And we finally just said, this is ridiculous. So we stopped watching them, and we give ourselves I think 30 minutes to watch just like the ABC news, which is, it's still a little bit lefty, but it's much more of a, here's a 30-second story. Here's a 1-minute story. Here's a 1-minute story. Here's a 1-minute story, rather than an hour of arguing about one topic, right? So so by disconnecting, like you say, is to kind of and we found we feel so much better, because we would get into it. We get anxiety watching some of this stuff.
Well, absolutely. And, there are times that things happen and we're drawn into the story of the day. But on most days, choosing a trusted source, I would say a printed source over a video source. But if you choose
I hadn't thought of that.
source,
I had not thought of that. I think that's a really excellent piece of advice.
And you can read multiple print sources.
Sure.
And consume that in a different way than viewing, different video sources. But, like you've done, limit that. If you're going to consume video media, limit the time. And I would highly suggest not ending your day with it.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Just saying, if that whips you up, when you have a high cortisol level, it is very difficult to go to sleep. Sleep is one of the best ways to get cortisol to come out of your body. Yeah. But a high cortisol level makes it hard to get to sleep.
Yeah. And of course that is advice that is passed. Now, they don't usually explain that it's cortisol that you're trying to bring down, but that the sleep specialists are always saying, an hour before you go to bed, disconnect, right? Yes. Stop doing that. And read a real book. Okay. And, yes. Even not even reading an ebook. Okay. Because that's still that digital electronic thing,
Yeah. Well, and oftentimes it's the blue light, and you can get.
Yeah, I understand. I understand the blue light stuff too. But
I wanted to offer one more tip on that.
Yeah, sure.
So when we're barraged by all of this, what usually is negative messaging in the news and that sort of thing, choosing to find something that changes your view really helps. I think I'm pretty good. I am not perfect in any manner. I'm pretty good at recognizing when my stress level is high and taking steps to, I work this system all of the time.
Yeah.
But I found this fall, like in the summer, I kind of we all acclimated to a certain level of uncertainty, but I think we all imagined that in the fall it was going to get better, and then it didn't.
It didn't, yeah.
And I really felt like things were ramping up again, and I needed to add something to my, bag of tricks. And what I found, and I put together a page with resources for you all, and this link is here.
Mm-hmm.
Another amazing professional speaker, Dr. Bertis Berry. She is a sociologist. She has one of the most beautiful voices I've ever heard. Just listening to her talk, it's just calming. She does 5 minutes every day on Facebook and YouTube, where she tells a story. The story is always delightful. Sometimes if she laughs, that's just another level of joy. They always have a point. There's always a call to action to make the world a better place.
Mm-hmm.
And then she ends by telling us she loves us.
Mm-hmm.
5 minutes can take all of the stuff I read in the morning that maybe has upset me a little bit. I disconnect. I enter my day at this like, no, really, I can be a force of good in this world.
Mm-hmm.
It has really made a difference, and she's brilliant. So I have that link. That's just
that's going to be now, because we're going to share a website, or actually, I should put this on in the chat is what I should do, so that people can see it. I'm going to do that right now. And tell us what it is. Tell us what this website is, because you can. All right, there you go.
Stressproofnow.com.
Right, stressproofnow.com.
And I just put that together for you all today.
Mm-hmm.
It has a ebook you can get for free on coping with uncertainty, which has some of the things I've talked about today, but a lot more as well. It has a link to Dr. Bertis Berry. If we talk about something else that isn't on there, I'll hop on and put it on there. But actually, then you can also
show them the page right now.
Oh, cool.
There we go. So, thanks for attending today. Okay, and we were going to, I was going to wait till later to share this, but this is as good a place as any is to that you can go to stressproofnow.com. Thank you for attending. Wish you low stress and great success. Here's something that's also part of this is that even if you don't get her book, and if you don't, I am going to personally come out and beat you. But that'll put stress on your head, okay?
Yeah, don't.
So she has an ebook, called "Coping with Uncertainty" that is terrific. I already, I read that before I read her book. But all you got to do is just sign up and you get it. Plus, she's also got, I love this, Iguana versus the Border Collie stress recovery quiz. We're not going to have time to talk about all this stuff. There's so many different things in here. Here's the mental health resources, and I assume that's where this woman's information is going to be.
Nope, she's right above it. Dr. Bertis Berry on YouTube.
Oh, there it is. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm just looking at the link copy. So she's on YouTube and Facebook. Okay, cool. And then of course it tells you about how that this book is actually going to be officially released on February 2nd.
Yay!
Next week. And and of course more information about her and stuff. And unfortunately, I was going to tell you all about how you could attend her big party,
my bubbly book bash.
But sorry, gang, it's already it's booked.
It's booked. It's full.
That's a joke. Her book bash is booked.
It is booked.
All right. Okay. Back to another thing we can do here. Strategy number 4: behave your way to success. Fake it till you make it. Right.
It's true.
That is great. Fake it till you make it is great advice. All right. I have no issue whatsoever. I recommend that highly.
Well, and my dad was a psychologist, and that was one of his favorite strategies, is that if you know what the behavior is, do it. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't believe it, even if you're not motivated to do it, just do it. Do it anyway. Yep. Because eventually you will do it and be enthusiastic about it, or it'll make a difference. Just doing the right behavior makes a difference.
A lot of that is and when you're a kid, you are fantasizing stuff, right? About the future, about, I would fantasize about being a Major League Baseball player or an astronaut or something like that. And you would play that way, right? And I always remember thinking, and even golf, and ultimately, yes, I was able to become a professional golfer. But I still remember growing up, and I would go out and I'd be on the golf course and I'd be practicing playing by myself, and I would act like I was in the U.S. Open or something like that. And I would imagine what it would be like to be walking down the fairway with thousands of people standing along the side and watching me. And how do golfers act, right? And that's what I would do. And so that's why I say this idea of fake it till you make it is very powerful. Is that if you tell yourself what would somebody who is successful behave like?
Right.
Right. but somebody who's
Absolutely.
handling this better, what would they behave like? What is it like to stand in front of in front of an audience and give a speech? And people say, I could never do that. And I go, you know what? Fake it till you make it. Just ask yourself, how would somebody act if they were standing on a stage? And just go
It's
do that.
absolutely true. I do want to say one thing about that, though, is we can be our own worst critics, especially when it comes to telling ourselves in a crisis, in periods of change or unrelenting uncertainty, well, I should be able to handle this better.
Yeah.
Our reactions to that stress, I mean, that was the first one, is recognizing that the reactions to stress are just natural. So whether you're sad or angry or paralyzed or whatever it is, that's just the reaction. Don't beat yourself up about it.
Right.
But don't get stuck there. You need to move on to doing something about it. But there's no way we can all do this perfectly. I mean, as I said, I work this every day. I'm not great at it every day, but I still go back to it.
Yeah. I hear you. Okay. I hear what you're saying. And, this particular chapter really jumped out at me about this manufacturing your security and these things. And the final strategy is to create artifacts of growth.
Oh, yeah.
How's that different from having a talent?
So there are lots of us who need a goal, need the next rung. That is what keeps us not only motivated, but satisfied. And that when we don't have those rungs, it's really hard. And uncertainty very often takes us out of our normal path.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know about you, but I had a plan for 2020. I did. It didn't really actually
there was a great
include doing all of my presenting in a box.
Yeah.
I have adapted, and my artifact of growth is that, yes, as we went around from March down through the summer and back up again, things got a little dire, but I grew and I acquired more skills and I acquired more equipment and learned how to use it. And that artifact of growth is I'm getting booked. Yay, to present in a box. That's great. I still am looking forward to actually being with other people at some point.
You saying you want to get back on an airplane?
Not quite yet.
Not me. But I never get on a plane again. But I've got 6 million miles, so I don't. You know what? I don't need any more miles. But
yeah, all right.
This stuff is fine for me right now.
Yeah, but that artifact of growth is actually really helpful if you're a leader or a manager and you have somebody who is struggling, or if you're going through change. It can't be the ultimate goal may be way over here, like 9 months from now. You have to have artifacts of growth along the way to celebrate, to hit and achieve and recognize your people for. Otherwise, this just is too much. So getting those small increments of growth and recognize that is really important, because it is so easy for us to achieve something. Like it took me 5 years and I actually wrote a book. Do you know how easy it would have been for me to say, okay, well, that's done, and not tell anybody about it?
Would it have been easy?
Well, you're a marketer, so it wouldn't have been easy for you, but it would have been easy for me to be like, okay, that's done. I'll move on to the next project.
Oh, okay. I hear you. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know any authors who are like that, but well, yeah, because even the ones who don't get published, you still hear about the fact that they wrote a book.
That's true. That is true.
And this, I'm not kidding. I mean, obviously it took me a while to write my book too, but when I was going through this, I just thought, wow, this really took a lot of time and effort, and the way you laid it out, and you've got all these little boxes.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, whoops, I got to get this word. There we go.
I tell you what, Sound Wisdom is a wonderful group to work with.
Yeah, they're terrific. Yeah,
they really embraced a different kind of book.
Mm-hmm.
And I so enjoyed working with them, and still enjoy working with them.
Yeah, Dave and Jennifer and everybody are fantastic people to deal with. Now because we're getting low on time here.
We're coming up on time.
I just want to say that if you got a question, pop it in there. Feel free to make a comment as well. And this is all being recorded, so this will be up probably tomorrow with the replay. I want to remind you that before we go to stressproofnow.com, and you can there's a lot of free stuff on there, and also to download the
ebook.
The book. What's the ebook?
Coping with Uncertainty.
Coping with Uncertainty. Okay, I knew it was a C word. It was starting to say countdown to uncertainty, but that's not what it was. So, okay, let's bring this full circle now. Okay.
Okay.
We are at the end. We have a couple minutes left, and what would you say to people? To just kind of bring it all together for you. What do you want them to walk away with?
I think there's a couple of things. First, really recognizing that uncertainty, particularly unrelenting uncertainty, is a difficult problem to deal with. It doesn't go away. We have to actively do things to disconnect from it, as we talked about it. And I want to give you a couple of tips that once you've disconnected, what do you do to tell your body that it's time to let go of that cortisol? The first one is to make your heart rate go up, keep it up there for a couple of minutes, and make it come back down. Longer is fine. And that's why exercise is the antidote to stress, really, is that getting your heart rate up and then letting it come back down again. And as it's coming back down, cortisol is leaving the body. Exercise is not the only way to raise your heart rate. I am a limited sports fan. I like college football, women's hockey, and college volleyball. Volleyball just started up again. This is a good thing. So if you're the kind of fan that I am, and you are actually like on your feet and like cheering at the television and getting excited, your heart rate goes up. And when they score, whatever it is, and you sit back down, you feel that sort of feeling, that is cortisol leaving your body. So that is an excellent way to tell your body, like, hello, it is time to let go of that cortisol. We talked about sleep being the best way to do that. I would suggest, again, not indulging in that media before bedtime, but actively finding ways to disengage from what's causing you stress so you can settle down and go to sleep. The Border Collie Iguana quiz is on the web, on the page that I sent you. It is how to find out what you need to disconnect from that stress in a list of activities that might be helpful. Yeah, that's great advice. Well, Eliz Greene, thank you so much for joining me today. It was my pleasure.
Yeah, this has been a lot of fun. I had a great time going through your book, and of course, when I saw that you were a sailor, I was like, "Hey,
hey, there you go."
And so now besides just having the same publisher, we like to be on the water. That's for sure.
Do.
Absolutely.
Well, if you get on a plane to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, you'll have to.
I don't know if I'm ever going to get on a plane. It's like when my daughter was young, and people would say, "What does your dad do?" She used to just say, "He gets on airplanes." So And my wife is perfectly happy with me hanging out here. Actually, she's
That's
a speaker
nice.
as well, and so she wants to get on the airplane, but I'm good with this. So
Great.
if you make sure you go to stressproofnow.com, sign up, download the stuff, and you can pre-order this book on Amazon. Stress Proof Your Life.
Be at your house next Tuesday.
That's right. It will be there next Tuesday. And then also do her a favor when you read this, leave a review. Every author,
that'd be great.
We love reviews. We love
do.
reviews. And thank you again for joining me. I greatly appreciate it. Hopefully I'll see you out on the water someday.
That'd be great.
We will definitely stay in touch, and I'll be better at handling my stress. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Those of you that are on the replay, appreciate you as well. This is Steve Miller, better known as Kelly's dad and marketing gunslinger. Thanks again for joining Eliz and I today. Always remember to be uncopyable, and I'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.